Hello and welcome and good morning. I hope everybody is having a beautiful morning. It's still spring, I think. No, actually, I do think last week was the first day of summer. So we are in summer now. Thank goodness. I love it. It's my favorite time of year. Welcome. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Evelyn Knight. I am the host of the Child Care Business Coach podcast. And some of you may be listening to right now, or you're watching the live stream video. I'm also the founder and CEO of Child Care Business Professionals and a Child Care Center owner. So I want to talk about what is happening inside Child Care Centers today and what we're really facing and the struggles that we live with today. And a lot of what we are living with is this post-COVID environment, right? And things are different. It was always kind of rough, but now it seems to even be more difficult than it was in the past. So I see a lot of things that are just crippling owners, and there's just so much, right? So how do we cope? How do we deal with it? First of all, I find taking care of our mental health to be very, very important. It is extremely important that you are taking care of you. Last week, I was talking to a group of owners, and gosh, I think there was a few thousand on the line. It was a worldwide group of owners, and we were talking about, well, like, how can you do this? How do you cope with everything that we have to deal with? And we were talking about how important it is to really have systems in place so that you can walk away when you need to. And so little owners have this, and directors. When you need time off, what do you do? How do you deal with it? How do you take charge and take control? So it's something I really like to just think about. And really, there's just a couple simple things that you need in place in order to have that life. And I want you to think of the why, right? Why is this so important? For me, I realized before that it was so important because of what I went through with my husband. When my husband got really sick and I had to be there for him, at that point, I didn't have systems in place where I could walk away. Everything was very dependent on me. But I was forced into a situation where I had to figure it out. I had to be able to walk away from my center so that I could take care of him. And for those of you who know me, you know that he ended up passing away. So thank God that I had people in my life and things in place and systems in place before. So, and I had people in my life actually who came alongside me during this really rough period, and we created my systems of operation. These systems basically spelled out everything I do, literally. And I mean, literally. There were times I might record my computer screen, right? And just talk to it. I literally would just go through everything I did and record it. And I created my systems so that I could be able to walk away. When it became very apparent that my husband was not going to make it, we really created systems so that I could leave for 12 weeks and both my companies would be fine without me. But that took a lot of work, and it took us really just writing everything down and training other people. Now I call it my system to duplicate myself. It's literally how I've been able to duplicate myself a couple times because it's kind of like a handbook and you hand it over. So going through this process, we started to realize we can do this with everybody. We can do this with our teachers. We can do this with the cook. It doesn't matter what position. So we started creating all of these systems for every single job in my childcare center. That turned into our new hire training, which is now a 6-month onboarding process. That and it just trickled, and that is now what we offer in Child Care Business Professionals. It's what we do. We help you create the same systems. Everything I created, I provide for my clients, literally. All of my systems of operations, my handbooks, every handbook I have, and I've got a few different ones. One of the things people so often confuse is they think that an employee handbook and policies and procedures are the same thing, but they're not. And they also think even systems of operations are the same, but they're actually three different things that are very important to have. So your employee handbook should be all the legal stuff, right? That you have to have covered, which our own Lisa Marie helps us here at Child Care Business Professionals with. She is our HR expert. But your employee handbook is going to have all of that legal stuff that you just need to be compliant. That's it. And it's going to have like the days off, time to vote, what is your employee child credit, all of those different things, right? So there's a lot to it. The next one are policies and procedures. So with my policies and procedures, I like to think of those as how do I want things to go in my center, right? So what is my philosophy? How do I believe children should be spoken to? How do I believe they should be? Do I believe in discipline or guidance, right? What are the guidance processes I believe in? Cell phone usage, right? Like what do I, and this is all documented, okay? And my staff is trained on it. Nap time. What do I expect of my teachers during nap time? When the children are playing outside, what do we expect of our teachers and how are they supposed to conduct themselves? So it goes into detail on how do you speak to the parents at pickup time? How do you speak to them at drop off? What are our drop off and pickup procedures? Everything. These are policies and procedures, right? How do you interact with the children? What should classroom rules be? This is all documented. It's all pre-done. What this creates is a way for every single teacher and parent in your center to know exactly what their expectations are. Did you know that all of human disappointment, everything that disappoints you in life, is due to unmet expectations? That's it. That's all it is. You expected something, it didn't happen. That's all. So when you have teachers who quit because they don't like working for you anymore, you have parents that leave. That means that they had an expectation, right? The expectation was not met. And then they walk away and they leave. So I actually looks like I have a guest trying to join us here. There she is, and I will wait for her to come on. So sorry, I removed. Okay. Hello, Monica. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Evelyn? So good to see you.
So good to see you. I'm so excited you get to join. So I will
Yeah.
let you introduce yourself. I know known Monica for a while now as an amazing ECE trainer and expert. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Monica Healer, and I lead an organization called Early Childhood Christian Network, and we try to provide great, high-quality training to faith-based programs throughout the nation. So yeah, I am a big champion for ECE. I think it's one of the greatest jobs in the world that we can have, that we can pour into young children and their families. And yeah, I mean, adding my faith to that makes it even more fulfilling for me.
Absolutely. That is an awesome option for in any case, I think. And yeah, I mean, everybody knows that I'm a God girl as well. And I don't,
Mhm.
not shy about it at all. That's for sure. So we're talking today about being just the struggles that people in ECE are facing and the
Mhm.
ability to really just be able to take care of yourself. And I know a lot of what you do
Mhm.
because you really provide some great trainings and information to the early childhood education world. So I don't know if you can see the comments. We've got another, I'm a God girl too. So but you provide so much training. And something that I think people really don't keep in mind is that the right training can also alleviate a lot of stress and a lot of the
Oh,
struggle.
absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah. So if you want to speak to that a little bit about how different trainings and really being selective, like being careful on what trainings you take, making sure
Sure.
your staff is careful, and also being more intentional instead of just trying to get hours done just to meet state
Mhm.
requirements,
Mhm.
being intentional about the
Right.
trainings that you take.
Sure. I really think when you think about early childhood training, yeah, I think a lot of us are in the world of like, let's get these hours done and move on. And so you turn on a webinar in the background, and in the end, you get your certificate, and woohoo, you're done. The reality, though, I mean, think about this like driving a car. Okay, if you're
Mhm.
going to hop in a car and you've never been in a car before, and you're not really sure how far to turn the steering wheel or how hard to push the gas pedal, it is going to be stressful, and you're probably going to have an accident, right? The same thing is true in our ECE classrooms. Like, we're putting people in classrooms without providing them with the knowledge that they need to be successful. So if they don't know how
Yes.
children learn, if they don't know how children develop, if they don't know how to handle an emotional meltdown or an upset parent or how to deal with coworkers, you're going to hit a brick wall. And so I think that's one of the reasons, I think, honestly, why we're seeing a lot of ECE burnout is because
Mhm.
we've gotten to
Yep.
the point where I mean, it's both good and bad, right? We have all this online training available for us, which is great, unless you're not actually doing the training, right? If you
Yeah.
just have it on in the background, you're not learning anything, and so you're not improving your skill set. And that's the same thing with, going back to driving a car. If you just watch a few videos on driving a car, or maybe have a video on in the background about driving a car, you're not actually learning how to drive a car,
Right.
So you're
Yeah.
hitting a brick wall. And so I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of our ECE burnout is people are not trained well. They're not um, they're not retaining the training. They're not applying the training that they're getting, and so they feel overwhelmed. They feel unequipped. Of course you do. Of course you do. So of course it's going to be a problem, and of course it's going to be hard to be in the classroom if you're not really equipped to be there.
Right, absolutely. And I could not agree with you more. One of the things I was talking to my audience about is how disappointment is because of unmet expectations, right? And I think
Yeah.
you hit on something really important here, in that we as EC leaders, a lot of times we're setting ourselves up for failure. It is our fault. And when I hear leaders complaining about their
Mhm.
staff and they just don't do this and that, I always say it comes down to leadership. That isn't
Mhm.
them. But if they
Mhm.
don't have the proper trainings, and if you are allowing them honestly just to go do whatever trainings they want
Mhm.
and just not really monitoring that, then they aren't being trained properly. And then what's
Exactly.
ended, and you've got these expectations of them that they really can't meet because they
Mm.
don't know. They don't know how to do what you're asking of them. So
Right.
yeah, I totally agree. And I think what you do is so very important, bringing the quality, because I know as an
Mhm.
owner myself, there is a lot of online training there that isn't the best quality. It isn't
Right.
what I know I want my teachers to bring into my classrooms. And it really is just a way to check a box for licensing.
Right.
So it needs to be so much deeper than that. The other thing I love about what you do is you're bringing people together. And there is
Yeah.
so much that you can gain from being in a room with your peers, from just
Absolutely.
the problem solving, the networking, the
Mhm.
connections and the relationships that you build.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I really believe in-person training is better than online training in every way. Now, that being said, I think that as a leader, as a director, you can do online training with your team and make it
Mhm.
a higher quality experience for them, right? Even if you're sending your team to watch individual webinars or individual online training, having conversations about that afterward makes a difference in the level of training. But yeah, my favorite thing is to bring people together in a room. I think there's so much energy, there's so much value to be had when you are sitting across the table from someone or next to someone, and they go, "Oh, I have this problem too. So I'm not the only one." Like, there's
Yes.
so much power in that connection with each other. I think there's a lot of extra learning that happens when you're actually just having conversations, which is why I
Yes.
love, like, at our events, we have longer breaks in between sessions, which feedback every year I get is, I didn't need 15 minutes to go from one session to another. And I mean, the reality is, no, it does not take 15 minutes to walk in a small conference center or in a church, which is mostly where we have our events. It doesn't take 15 minutes for you to walk from one room to another. I totally get that. But what we know about brain science, what we know about relationship is when you build relationship with people, when you give your brain a chance to break in between consuming knowledge and really give yourself time to process knowledge, even better if you're building connections, right? And processing
Yes.
knowledge together with someone else. So we're super intentional in how we plan our events in that way because we want people to have time to network, time to process what you're learning with someone else. And then I think all the better if you can process with somebody who's not in your school. Because sometimes I think we can get in that, this is how we do it, and this is just how we've always done it. And when you can process with someone who's in a different location, in a different school, getting that different perspective in, having somebody else just kind of talk you through, oh, well, we've done it this way, and this has been super successful. I think it just knocks you out of your almost like confirmation bias, right? Is the term we've been hearing a lot over the last couple of
Yes.
years. Is get out of your own bubble and
Uh-huh.
see what other people are doing. There's so much benefit in doing that, and I don't think that you can easily do that online. I think it's possible, but you have to be super intentional
It's so
to do
hard.
that
Yeah,
in
it's really
online.
hard. And for me personally, I have a really hard time. I actually have a couple of different types of ADHD that I struggle with, and I've also have narcolepsy. So online classes are just, I don't know, for me, it is a way for to multitask, right? I can't
Oh,
just sit
absolutely.
here and participate. I will multitask. I will do a lot of other things, unless it's very interactive. There are some trainers who make it very, very interactive, which is like for me, through childcare business professionals, we do a lot of online trainings, but I've chunked them very intentionally in a way
Mhm.
for people like me who have attention problems and they have
Right.
like these little 10-minute segments, then they have to do an activity and then another. But most of these trainings for like teachers, they're like 2 hours of just sitting there and listening. And
Yes.
I know I can't do that. So why would I ask my teachers to do it or rely on that to really train my teachers? But yeah,
Mhm.
going back to what you said about the getting out of your own bubble, that is something
Mhm.
that we love to talk about a lot too, is when I always just bring it back to like that fishbowl. When you're in your own fishbowl, you can't see outside your fishbowl. You don't know
Yeah.
what the environment outside the fishbowl really is. And so you kind of just keep swimming in that same water. And as mucky as it gets, you never see outside it, right? You're swimming in your own muck, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
whenever I have somebody come to me like a new client and they start asking me like just saying, well, this isn't working and the teachers are doing this, and I ask them, and a lot of times we'll give them a suggestion and they say exactly what you were saying. But this is the way we've always done it. So I always like, well, how's that
Mhm.
working for you? Because you wouldn't be
Exactly.
talking to me if it was working for you. So that's something for all of you to think about. If you're kind of stuck in, this is how I've always done this, stop
Mhm.
and ask yourself, but how is that working for me? And all those struggles that you're having, if it's not working, then maybe as a leader, it's something you need to change. It's not your staff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And that's, I mean, it sounds like we're dogging a lot on online training. And the reality is, I mean, it's part of our
There's
reality
some
right now.
great training. Yes.
Some of
Yeah.
your training is going to be online. I just think as leaders, we've got to be intentional in when we choose online training and how you choose it, and then what are you going to do with it? Because,
Yes.
I mean, the reality, even for our organization, is we have a whole course library on our website that's an hour, 2 hour webinars that we've
Mhm.
recorded specifically for that library. And sure, like I can turn that on again in the background and not learn really anything. I can take the quiz at the end and get
Yes.
my certificate because a lot of that, if you've been in early childhood, you probably can pass the quiz. I mean, that's the reality. But if you, as a leader, will say, hey, we're going to take this training, take it on your own time, but we're coming back together on Friday at whatever, Friday at 8, Friday,
Oh,
whatever,
yeah.
whenever you have a staff meeting or some kind of connection. And I want to hear, what did you learn? What are you going to implement? How are you going to implement that in your classroom? What difference did it make? You know, what resonated with you? Do you have students that fit that?
Yes.
Um, you can even make online training a lot more valuable for your staff if you are intentional as the leader in bringing your staff together to talk about it, to process together. Because I mean, the reality for me is I listened to a webinar this morning while I was responding to emails. Could I tell you
Mhm.
anything about what I learned? I mean, I could tell you who the speaker was and the general topic, but not really anything that I'm going to apply, not really, because I wasn't really engaged,
Right,
and that's,
right.
I think,
Yeah.
a lot of us, what we do.
Yeah.
when we hit online trainings is we're not really engaged. You could tell me the speaker maybe, and you could tell me the basic gist, but you're not going to apply it. You're marking a checkbox, which I think is unfortunate.
So, but and this was pre-COVID, but when I was going through some classes to learn how to be a more effective and a better trainer, one of the
Hmm.
statistics I learned that has really resonated with me is that when a person goes through training, they only actually, whether it's live or online, they
Hmm.
only remember about 15% of the training. And they only
Yeah.
implement less than 5%. So one of the things that you said really just struck me, whether it's live or online, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's some excellent online trainings out there as well,
Hmm.
but really it comes down to coaching.
Yeah.
So the statistic was that it was actually for the taxi program. I was going to become a taxi trainer, and basically they were showing that the difference, if you incorporate coaching into training, that 5% implementation actually switches over to an 80%. So it
Wow.
was
That's significant.
so yeah, it was so impactful for me, because before I would send all my staff to these trainings and I'd wonder, well, they're not learning anything and nothing's training. And I'm a trainer for the state of Nevada. So I would be doing all these trainings and I would do trainings for my staff and nothing was really changing. And when I took that one course, it just stuck with me because I realized that's the missing piece. I'm not coaching
Mm.
my staff. And
Yeah.
I switched it over. So exactly what you're saying for directors is be really, really intentional on select the trainings. Then how are you going to come back and make sure that you're coaching your staff on what they learned to make sure it's really being implemented in the classroom? So if you do something like conscious discipline, which is
Hmm.
an excellent, or taxi's excellent pyramid model, um, making sure that it's not just a one and done, they learned all this great stuff, but how are you going to go back and coach them to make sure it's implemented? And
Hmm.
you can
Hmm.
create generic templates that are basically right after the training, just have something like, well, let me know what you learned. What are you going to implement? And then have
Right.
follow-ups. Have you implemented this? What is being implemented? But making sure it's actually, because you really can turn a training into something wonderful, whether it's online or
Mhm.
live,
Mhm.
as long as you're coaching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love the idea of having a template, which like I love the idea of having your staff set goals for themselves. So
Yes.
if you're listening to a training, the end of that training, like the conclusion of that training should be, what are you going to do with this knowledge, right? What
Mhm.
goals do you have because of this? What's going to change because of what you just learned? And then yeah, as a leader, a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, saying, okay, have you implemented that? And how did that go? Is that working? What do you need to adjust? So that's how you're going to really increase the quality of your centers is
Yes.
by really holding your staff to their own goals and then also setting goals for them if they're struggling with
Absolutely. Yep. And for a lot of you leaders, I know as we're talking, a lot of you are thinking, well, how am I supposed to have the time to do this? Right there.
that.
I already don't have
Mm,
enough time to do this, and I don't have enough time for that.
yeah.
And I can say you do have time. I learned this is a lesson I've learned in my life the hard way, that we just don't understand what we do with our time. And a lot of
Very
us have
true.
very poor time management. We don't know where our time is going because we're really not conscious of it. But I realized when my husband was ill and I basically had to figure out how to run two companies and be his nurse at the same time, I learned some time management hacks, and it kind of opened my eyes to like, wow, I used to think I had no time, but really I have plenty of time. I just didn't know how to manage it. So now for my center, we have these time management techniques that we train on, that my directors use. And basically, my directors every week, they have the opportunity to go in and observe the classrooms, and every week they give feedback. So by the end of the month, every single one of my classrooms and teachers have had observations and feedback completed. And with trainings,
Mhm.
that is a perfect time to really come back and make sure with the goal setting, like, just
Mhm.
coming in and asking, what are your goals? What did you learn from this training? How are you going to implement? So when
Mhm.
you really learn how to respect your time and organize your time, this all can be done. And this is where you're going to relieve so much of that stress and pressure on you as an EC leader because you're taking control of the center. And instead of constantly putting out fires, you become proactive and you're preventing them from happening.
Right.
So, and that is really the power of just good training with some good follow-up.
I think something really powerful that you'll see if you'll prioritize this time to coach leaders, what you'll see is there are fewer fires to put out. I mean, as your
Yes,
staff is better equipped, there's less for you to step in and manage for them. And so,
exactly.
yeah, at the beginning when you're doing it, you're changing a habit that's hard for you to change, mainly because you've wired yourself to work in a certain way. But once you change that wiring for yourself and really prioritize this coaching, you will see that your center runs more efficiently because your staff is better equipped.
Yep.
The children are learning better. There's fewer behavior issues because your staff is equipped to handle what they encounter. And I
Yes.
mean, you're not working yourself out of a job. I'll say that. Like they're always going to need you, but in a totally different way.
Yes. And yeah, and it's empowering because that's when you get the higher quality program. Like my center, we just went through our quality rating and we scored high enough to be a 5-star center. So we're going through NACE accreditation and different things. And all of that happened when we did exactly what you're saying. We
Mm-hmm.
really what it is, and like you were saying, I think a lot of directors are afraid that they're going to work themselves out of a job or different
Mm-hmm.
things. But really, you're just creating higher quality and taking a lot less stress off of your own shoulders when you do these things. And for me, I used to be the director who was very controlling, had to micromanage. And the other thing I learned is I had some genius employees that I was holding them back. And some of their ideas and their methods were actually better than mine. But because I was micromanaging and I was being controlling, I wasn't allowing their greatness to shine. And
Right.
I actually realized this in a staff meeting. We had gone through this episode at my school where it was one year, we actually had 3 children pass away. And they were all
Oh.
had some kind of terminal illness, but it just took such a toll on my center that we decided to do this staff meeting to try and just get our mental health back. And I asked them to
Mm-hmm.
dream. And I asked them to create these, like, if they could create their dream classrooms, what would it look like? And what came out of that, I was like, wow, this is stuff they could do. But I realized in that moment that I had been holding them back. And
Mm-hmm.
I stopped micromanaging, let them fly, let their classrooms become their classrooms instead of everything having to be mine. And it was amazing how that is part of the reason I now have a 5-star quality center, because I stopped micromanaging. And we're so afraid not to micromanage, right? Because we're so afraid if we let
Right.
go of that control, that everything's going to fall apart. But sometimes that control is what's making everything fall apart.
Well, and I think something that I was thinking just now as you were talking about coaching staff is really just the benefit that it is in staff retention is when your staff really believe that you're invested in them. And that comes from coaching, right? Like some people receive feedback easily and some not so much. But when you're coaching people consistently, they feel valued in your organization, which is going to help them stay. Like they want to stay with people who they think care about them. And I
Yes.
think that, I mean, the more we're learning too about Gen Z in the workplace, I think that's a whole other thing, right? Like they're coming at us thinking, I I don't need anybody's help. I can just Google it. But the reality
Yes.
is their deeper desire is still for mentorship and relationship. And so can we as leaders provide that mentorship and leadership to them? Because we know that sure, you can Google a lot of stuff, but gaining that experience in the classroom with a mentor, with a trusted person that you can go to is, I mean, it's one of their high values is community and relationship. And so can you provide that as a coach to them? Absolutely. Much more so than when you walk in there and treat them like, oh, you're just a young Gen Zer, like you don't know what you're talking about,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, Monica, this has been awesome, and it's so good to see you. I haven't talked to you in a long time, so it's good to see you and talk to you.
Yeah.
What events do you have coming up? What would you like to promote?
We've got two big events coming up in the state of Texas here in just a couple of weeks. Our Central State Conference is in the Austin area, just north of Austin, in a town called Georgetown. That's July 13th and 14th. Registration's open for that right now. And then our largest event of the year is August 3rd and 4th. That's in the DFW area, Dallas-Fort Worth, just north of Dallas in McKinney, which is actually where I live. And yeah, that event is almost sold out. We have about 100 spots left there. Last year it did sell out. So if you're interested, check that out on our website, earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com. And then we've also built a really fun online, I mean, it's a virtual in-service, but we've made it super interactive. It's basically like a little mini conference. It's 4 hours worth of training, but we've added a lot of interactive things to it. There's team building activities, table activities, discussions, games to play with your team. So it's pre-recorded great content from high quality speakers with a lot of fun mixed in. So hopefully that'll be beneficial for your teams. And that's available online, so you don't have to travel to Texas to participate in that.
Oh, that's great. That is wonderful. Yeah, so we will make sure to get all of that in our notes for everybody watching so they can look into attending some of those. I know I've been a part of one of your conferences, and it was very well done, and that I always love those high quality conferences. So yeah, you guys do an excellent job.
Yeah, we try to bring in really great trainers, and you were one of those. Two years ago, I think, at our director's retreat. We do a couple of leader-specific events. These conferences this summer are actually for your whole staff. But our leader-specific events, we do a retreat in March that's really about rejuvenating and refreshing leaders, because about March, a lot of us start going like, what am I doing? I am worn out. And so we do try to do that late February. Next year's is scheduled for, I think, February 28th through March 1st. So we don't have a whole lot of details on that yet other than dates, but yeah.
Well, thank you, Monica.
It's been so fun to see you, Evelyn.
No, I know we need to have you on more. Thank you.
Well, I would love that. And yeah, it's been fun.